So you all know who I am. Turn off your cell phones. So this is obviously the conference template, and lots of information about PASS. So I am going to attempt to do this in 31 minutes and 43 seconds, according to my speaker timer. So again, mini version of a longer session, but this is what I'll be talking about at PASS. What's new in reporting services, both 2016 and 2017. We'll talk about Power BI integration with reporting services, both what we had in 2016 and the new Power BI report server. Some design and visualization improvements. Talk a little bit just about general approaches to report design. I'm not going to get into this in this presentation, but during the pre-con, we'll talk about the fundamentals of report design with emphasis on visual report design, dashboard design, and report navigation, and then integration with Power BI and the rest of the Microsoft reporting stack, using reporting services with analysis services. In addition to T-SQL, DAX, and MDX queries, we now have support for DAX queries against analysis services tabular. Upgrading, integrating reports and applications. Talk about mobile report options, some newer features, some improvements with parameters and drill through. Managing the web portal, which is the new reporting services browser-based interface. And then server management and configuration. So I'm going to obviously race through a lot of that tonight, but I always start with the objectives, and this essentially reminds me what I told the audience I was going to talk about. So this is really more for my purposes than anyone else, but this is the session abstract for the pre-con. So, high level. First of all, just by raise of hands, how many of you are using SQL Server reporting services today? Okay. How many of you are using Power BI today? All right. Using any of Microsoft's analytic data modeling and storage tools, such as SQL Server analysis services. Okay. And if you're using Power BI, then you're also using that platform as well in a lighter form. Over the past many years, Microsoft have released a number of different reporting and analytic tools. It's been a long history. It's a complicated history in many ways, but it's really boiled down to a few tools. Microsoft, I think more than a lot of vendors, tend to create a lot of products. I think that a lot of that is because Microsoft promotes a lot of innovation. They really incent people, and they want people within Microsoft to innovate and to explore and to experiment. They have the research labs. A lot of the product teams have their own research divisions. So they tend to kind of make stuff up and do little cottage and hobby projects. And sometimes those evolve into products. And then they buy a lot of products. And they acquire a lot of companies. And in that mix, sometimes they have something and they'll throw it on the wall and see if it sticks. And if it does, then they'll productize it and sell it and license it. And if it doesn't, then it goes away. And that can be a little frustrating for a lot of us because we invest in a product that eventually doesn't get a lot of support, but it also does spawn a lot of innovation. And so there's kind of a positive and negative kind of side to the way that Microsoft thinks about evolving a lot of their software. I think that the BI story really has become very fully baked compared to where we've been in the past. And it's really boiled down to this, that there are a handful of analytic reporting and visualization tools that are really a core part of the Microsoft suite. There was a realization several years ago that people in the world really want to consume their data in what? Excel. Everybody wants to use Excel. And 10 years ago, Excel was this tool that everybody at Microsoft was trying to get you to get away from. It was just a spreadsheet program. But you create a reporting services report, and the user's first question is, where's the export to Excel button? I want to export my data to Excel. So we really treat Excel as a first-class citizen now. And then reporting services, which comes in two different forms. The report designer that's integrated into Visual Studio, now called SQL Server Data Tools, as of 2012, 2014-ish. It was a little confusing for a while. And then we've had Report Builder for some time now. which I wouldn't call an end user tool, but I would call a power user report design tool. And then mobile reports, which we'll talk about a little bit later, and then Power BI. And Power BI really is kind of, you know, the shiznick of Microsoft Analytics now. It's just, it's kicking butt in the Gartner analytic magic quadrants and Forrester, and they're really putting a lot of resources and money behind it, and it's really taken hold and become a very, very successful product. But it's hard to have an elevator speech about what Power BI is, because it is a number of things. All right, so how can reporting be modern? So reporting services is now 15 years old. I remember when it came out. I learned about reporting services when I was riding a ferry into Seattle. I was commuting every morning, and a friend of mine who was a director with the Walt Disney Internet Group, I commuted with every morning, snuck me a CD-ROM. And he said, here, install this, but don't tell anybody where you got it. And it was a beta or an alpha version of reporting services, and I fell in love with reporting services. So reporting services is a classic. So you think about a classic. Here's a classic Camaro. Okay? Here's a classic Mustang. These are awesome cars, right? So, you know, a few years ago in the auto industry, they figured out that people really want classics. So what did they do? They modernized the classic. Okay, now we've got modern versions of the classic. And I really think that this tells the story of reporting services. Reporting services is that classic, and they've modernized it some. They left it alone for a while. And so reporting services today is test-driven, and it's time improved. Okay, so if there are any Chrysler fanatics, I'm so sorry I couldn't get, you know, I couldn't get the Charger on there. There just wasn't room for it. So what is modern reporting? Modern reporting today is browser agnostic. Doesn't matter what web browser you use. Shouldn't matter what device you use. It's mobile. It's self-service. That's sometimes a complicated word. It's multimodal, which means it works on different devices and across different devices. Incrementally improved. Integrated, which means that I can put it into applications and I can create solutions around it. That slide's not done. But let's talk about reporting services edition. So this is going back to my earlier deck, and I'm in the process of evolving this forward. If Jazz were here, I would ask her to remind us when the session decks are due, and that would be midnight tonight. Guess what I'll be doing after this? All right. So a quick summary of reporting services improvements introduced in 2016. New report web portal. So who's using reporting services, well, prior to 2016? Who's using versions of reporting services prior to 2016? And then who's using 2016? OK, so this is the first thing that you'll notice, is that when you go to http:// server name / reports, that it doesn't look like Report Manager anymore. It's very, very different. It has this Windows 10 flat, colorful tile kind of look to it. And this is the new report portal. It replaces Report Manager. It really does all the stuff that Report Manager did in earlier versions, but it's newer and modern. And it is responsive, and it works on mobile devices, and it really is improved in a lot of ways. OK, modern report rendering, which means that reporting services reports now render in true HTML5, which is designed to be responsive in many ways. But it will work in all modern web browsers that support HTML5 standards. OK, so there's no longer emulation. There's no more is there a whole bunch of JavaScript code in there that says if this is Chrome, do this, and if this is Firefox, do this, and if it's IE7, this, and 8, then this, and 9, this, and 10. You know, it was really crazy for a while. There's a new parameter UI in the designer. It's not earth-shattering, but it is an improvement. There are a couple of new charts. Again, no fireworks there, but some incremental improvements. Some minor updates to the report builder design interface. Mobile reports and KPIs, which came with the DataZen acquisition. And when we talk about Power BI, I want to come back and talk just a little bit about mobile reports and KPIs and really what to expect if you have the need to create mobile reports. Printing does not require a browser add-in. In the past, there was an ActiveX add-in that required all of your users to download and install an ActiveX control that was a little bit of a problem for operations folks. And so it just uses the PDF renderer now. Since all browsers know how to print PDFs, they said, well, why don't we just render it as a PDF, and the browser can print it. That's easy. There is a PowerPoint export option. So a set of reports, multi-page reports, will create a multi-slide deck of PowerPoints, and text actually exports to text, and graphics export to graphics. And then there are some report viewer control updates and integration with Power BI that I'm going to talk about in the next 21 minutes. So talked about this, that really reporting services is designed to be browser agnostic, which means that on your iPad or on your Mac, it's going to use Safari and it'll work just fine. If you prefer to use Chrome, like we all prefer to use Chrome, it works. Of course, it'll work in Edge and it'll work in IE 11, but reports may not render correctly in earlier versions of Internet Explorer. So if you're running Windows XP, if you're running Windows ME, you may have some problems, but you probably have other problems anyway if you're using those. Okay, so let me do a real quick demonstration of the web portal environment. That's Power BI. So this is the new web portal that replaces the old report manager. It's very simple. And there's some very simple, intuitive concepts here. I'll tell you a really quick story. Sunday, I set some time aside, and I thought, okay, I'm going to uninstall SQL Server 2016, and I'm going to install SQL Server 2017, the release candidate 2, and that ought to be easy because all SQL Server upgrades are easy, right? I've re-imaged my machine twice. And I did it again last night, and so I've got brand new software and still have some things to configure. Don't do this. Don't install Visual Studio before you install the SQL Server 2017 release candidate. So I learned the hard way that there's a problem with that. Apparently it's happened in earlier versions of SQL Server, but hoping that's something that they sort out, or maybe it's just a me problem. I'm not sure. But what you'll see is that if I, as a user, navigate to a report, so I'm in this report folder, and I've got all of these reports, and in a corporate environment, we may have hundreds upon hundreds of reports that are all organized into folders. Well, here's a really simple concept that most users intuitively understand, that if they go to the ellipsis here and say, well, I like that report, I'm going to add that. Oh, I'm so sorry. Thank you. Let's do that. Thank you. So there's just a little ellipsis up here in the corner of each of these report tiles. And I can add that to my favorites or remove it from my favorites if it's already there. If I like this KPI, I go up and I add that to favorites. And I've got all of these other reports that I typically have to search for or fish for, but let's say that this is an important report. I'm going to add that to favorites. And so when I navigate to the web portal, I see my favorites. That's a pretty simple concept that we see in a lot of software today, but users just kind of get favorites. And generally speaking, it's not different. Yeah, it really is a modern face on the same tool. It's the same architecture. You still have shared data sources, shared data sets. At its core, reporting services is still the same. You bet. Okay, so favorites are one thing. Now you notice that we've got some new report types here. I've got KPIs and I have a mobile report. Let me just kind of put a pin in the mobile report topic right now until I get to talking about Power BI integration. But let me go back to Browse, and I'm going to go into another folder, and let's actually run this report. So Okay, so you can see that, so this is actually a default chart type. So I created this chart without having to tweak a whole lot of properties. It's the same charts, same properties. The design experience is very much the same as it has been in the past. However, all of the default color schemes and theming in the visuals are very modern. It's not the old Excel looking with the gradient fills and the borders and all of the junk that kind of looks very last decade. And so but the default is blocky, white background, kind of minimalistic, very much like what we are used to seeing in Windows 10 today. So the design experience I'm not going to take you through because it is very much like it's been before. But as a report designer, I really have two options. I can manage my reports and content through Visual Studio like I'm used to doing with other development assets. Or we can keep things nice and simple, and I can either create a new paginated report, and when I select paginated report, if I haven't installed Report Builder before, we used to have the old click once thing where the install bits were actually on your server. Well, because Microsoft is promoting the concept of evergreen products, this idea that they're going to update products pretty often. Now, this drives old school admins crazy that it's like, well, what version do we sanction and do we support? And my answer is the current one. And if the company needs to decide that, well, we'll support the August release or the September release, that maybe we'll create network policies around that and maybe not let people install the absolute latest version. But the default behavior here is that when they choose paginated report, a little window is going to pop up and say, hey, you don't have Report Builder installed. We'll take you to a link and you can install the latest. So we don't use the click once .NET capability anymore. But if I choose paginated report, that's just going to open up Report Builder, and then it'll create a new report for me. Now, if I already have reports that I want to edit, then I just go to the ellipsis and I can say edit that in Report Builder. And I've got Windows is on default high safety here, so it's going to ask me every time I go to open something. But that just opens up in a very Office-like application with the tabs and ribbons and a user interface that should be fairly intuitive and familiar to most advanced Windows users. And you can see that a lot of very, very familiar concepts here if you've done report design anymore with reporting services. All right, I need to move ahead real quickly. I've got a whole bunch of stuff open, and let's see, where am I? Right there. Okay. So just in the interest of time, I'm not going to switch back to presenter view. KPIs and mobile reports. So a couple of years ago, Microsoft bought a company called DataZen. They desperately needed a mobile dashboard and mobile reporting solution. This was circa Power Pivot and Power View, if you're familiar with the self-service BI story. That was evolving. There wasn't a Power BI yet, and I think that Power Pivot and Power View and Power Query and Power Map, those Excel add-ins, there was just a lot of confusion in the industry. I think Microsoft was creating some great technology, but it wasn't quite being packaged in a way that was really getting adoption. And though the marketing team called an early version of it Power BI, it was really an Office 365 subscription add-in with SharePoint Online, and then you had to have the right version of Excel and download all of these add-ins, and users couldn't figure it out. And if you were using the 32-bit version and somebody else was using the 64-bit version, it was just a big mess. So that's when they bought DataZen, because they needed a mobile reporting story. So what we got with DataZen was what we now call Reporting Services KPIs, which is a very simple web-based KPI design environment where you essentially just say, go run this query, and that's my actual value. Go run this other query, or it could be the same query and use different columns. That's my target value. Compare the actual to the target and derive the status. Optionally, you can have a trend. That's really what a KPI is. A key performance indicator is a metric that's usually pulled from a database. It could be relational, it could be analysis services. Compare that to a target of some kind. I've worked with plenty of big companies where, as I sit down in front of the executives and say, okay, where are your goals? And they say, well, we don't have goals here. They're just, it's just tribal knowledge. We know what the annual sales goal is. It's on everybody's mind, and it's in Martha's spreadsheet. And so if that's not in a database, that's okay. You can hard code that. And then next year we'll go hard code it again. And because that's a reality in business, we don't necessarily force a full-scale BI solution on a group of users. So KPIs are this very simple web-based thing that work well on a mobile device. They're fairly easy to design. And it really is, you're just running a bunch of queries and getting these numbers and visualizing them. Mobile reports is really the core of what DataZen was. And what it was and what it still is in reporting services mobile reports is a tool that you use to design a very simple report based on a shared data set that runs queries, caches the results, and you can parameterize against that cache, but it's really intended to be cached so that it works well on a mobile device without sucking up a lot of bandwidth. And if you want to refresh that data once a day, then the mobile app will do that. But it's not really intended to run live against a large volume of data. And the end result is a set of mobile devices, or a set of mobile reports that will work on any modern mobile device, including, the iPad, the new iPhone 10 that costs $1,000, your Android devices, any Windows devices, and all of you who still have Windows phones, and of course, desktop. So let me just show you a quick example of what the mobile report looks like. So this is a mobile report that's just being rendered in the browser, but it would the experience would be very similar on my phone. But what you'd see on my phone is that when I turn it into portrait mode, that the tiles move around. It's responsive. And it's optimized so that I can touch the screen and interact with it on a mobile device rather than using the mouse and using very finite controls. It's very interactive in that I can click things and I can drill through. This is a fairly simple report where I don't have drill through. I've got my date hierarchy up here where I can select a year and drill down into the month and drill down to the week. I can drag across. It's very, very simple. And I can also design this so that I can drill through and navigate even on my phone. So this brings up a really, really important question, and that is, what should my mobile story be? Since this time, Power BI is really evolved into not only the go-to self-service analytic tool, but it's also now a first-class data visualization and analytic tool to be used on top of enterprise data. So we've got reporting services mobile reports, and we have Power BI. And you won't hear this probably from someone wearing a blue badge from Microsoft, but it doesn't look like Microsoft is going to be putting a lot of cycles and a lot of investment into reporting services mobile reports going forward. That's the writing on the wall. It's not an official statement. Because since they acquired this product and integrated it with reporting services, they've just bet the farm on Power BI. Power BI team is something like 500, 600 people now. So there's a lot of development resources, there's a lot of effort, a lot of marketing behind Power BI, and every month you're seeing a boatload of new features continually poured into Power BI, not so much into this tool. So I think that the takeaway from that is, if you need a mobile story, in addition to or separately from a self-service BI story, if you just need mobile-aware reports that a developer creates and puts on a server or puts in the cloud that you use against your enterprise data, I would look at Power BI first. Now, if you're not able to use Power BI for whatever reason, then this is a good option. Just know that I'm not quite sure where it's going to be in 3 years. So that's a safe enough statement. As our Microsoft representative in the okay, so I'm gonna race ahead to another slide, and this is often kind of the elephant in the room. No, we're not talking about Hadoop, but we're talking about licensing. All right. So, how many of you work with SQL Server Enterprise Edition? Okay, Standard Edition. Okay, so we have a few folks who do both. Okay. The way that Power BI is licensed is this. If you have a single user or a small group of users who need to author and consume reports, you need to share those reports within members of a small group, somebody signs up for a Power BI subscription at $10 a month for Power BI Pro, and then you share those reports out to people by email address, and each of them get an invitation so that they can pay $10 a month as a Power BI Pro user. Okay, so the free version of Power BI is now a solo version. It's a solo license. It's for one person to author their reports, import some data, model the data, create some calculations, and publish that up to the Power BI service where they can always get to it. Now that person can share that publicly to everybody on the planet or with themselves. They cannot share it in a private way to other people. It's like Microsoft's trying to make money on this thing or something. Otherwise, every user has to cost somebody $10 a month for a Pro subscription. Now, there is another option. You can buy Power BI Premium. So Power BI Premium, which retails for $5 a month, allows everybody in your organization to be able to view and create reports that Power BI Pro users author. It still costs $10 a month. That's retail. I'm doing work at KinderCare. Our cost is about a quarter of that because they're education, so there are discounts available for government and education and maybe other businesses. But so why is that important? So SQL Server Standard includes paginated reports. It doesn't include mobile reports. So as a standard user, there's no mobile report option. Power BI is not integrated. Mobile reports aren't integrated. You get paginated reports, which work on a mobile device. They're just not optimized for mobile. With SQL Server Enterprise, you get mobile reports and KPIs now. So there's the mobile story that's all covered as part of your licensing. If you have software assurance with Enterprise Edition, you get Power BI Report Server, which means that you can now author Power BI reports that are connected to your analysis services model or that import data from SQL Server. Then you can deploy that to your on-premises Power BI Report Server, which is really just an upgrade of reporting services. And now you have a Power BI solution on-prem that everybody in your company is licensed to use. The author of those reports still has to be a Power BI Pro subscription user, $10 a month retail. The next tier is, I mentioned Power BI Pro, and the next tier is Power BI Premium. And so that means that you bite the bullet and spend that higher subscription cost monthly, which essentially gives you a Power BI server, a physical server in the cloud that is yours. And you have guaranteed capacity, and there's no limit to the number of users that can connect to that up to the capacity of that server, which typically we figure is going to be a few thousand users. And so This is what we're doing at KinderCare. We have software assurance with Enterprise, and we bought Power BI Premium because it's education. It's deeply discounted, but this is actually most cost effective on our project, and we figure that we have about 2,000 users eventually, and so this was the more cost effective way to go. It's probably not real attractive for a smaller business, and if that's the case, then we're talking about Power BI Pro subscriptions. So let me show you what the Power BI report server looks like. It's reporting services. I just had to install it. So I didn't have reporting services installed. I didn't check that box when I installed SQL Server. Even if I did, this would have been upgraded. And then I just went and downloaded Power BI Report Server, which installed this version of reporting services. And what that means is that I can now open up Power BI Desktop, author my Power BI reports that are connected live to analysis services, or I import a cache of data from SQL Server, and then I deploy into the report server. And these reports will, if the server were properly configured, run right here in my browser on-prem. And I don't even have to be connected to the internet anymore. I have Power BI running on-prem. This is still in preview, but Power BI Report Server also includes the Excel, what do they call it? Excel Office Services? Angie, is that right? Anyway, it's the same web-based version of Excel that runs in OneDrive or Excel Online. Yeah, so that's actually integrated into Power BI Report Server. So this won't work now because I don't have this feature turned on. But so you take your Excel workbook and you connect it live to analysis services, and you go create pivot tables and pivot charts, and you add slicers and filters, and you create these beautiful reports in Excel. And if you don't like pivot tables, you can use cube functions. So you can actually create a worksheet that doesn't, you don't have to deal with the behaviors of a pivot table. It's a little more work, but you can create a full fidelity connected worksheet with slicers and filters, et cetera. And then you save that here, and when a user clicks on this, it doesn't open Excel. It just opens up in the browser, and they're interacting with live data. So this now covers Excel as a report tool. It covers Power BI as a report tool. And it covers, of course, reporting services as a report tool. That kind of begs the question, what would I use mobile reports for? And it's just, if you aren't in a position to license Power BI Report Server, which again is just, in my opinion, not really packaged for the kind of the small business SQL Server standard user. But then again, I have to have Enterprise to use it. So there's a really fine line there, and that's why I'm not quite sure what the future looks like for reporting services mobile reports. Okay. So a question that I have for you is anyone working in an environment where you cannot utilize cloud services for reporting and analytics? Okay. Healthcare? Or no, just policy. Okay. And so this really is the solution for that. Now, there is another integration for Power BI, and it's actually very simple. So I'm going to open up the Reporting Services Configuration Manager. You can see that this is the CTP, actually the release candidate. But you'll see that there is a new integration option down here. Now, I have already registered this, and I'm not quite sure. No, I did this just, yeah, it's going to blow up. All right. So, like I said, brand new install. Well, I do. It's kind of my job. Yeah. So, yeah, I don't know what's going on. So the way that that works is that if my report server is integrated with my Power BI subscription up in the cloud, my users are going to get, and you know what, I'll bet that I just lost my internet connection. Nope, I didn't. Oh, well, yeah, I think that's what happened. So I'm going to give this another shot really quick just because I'm kind of persistent and bullheaded like that. So let's close and reopen. And update registration. OK. OK, good. The little warning went away. And so what that means now is that when I open a report, so let's go here. Go ahead and run that report. So with Power BI service integration, the concept is that for all of my users, they go to one place for all of their reporting and analytics, and that's their Power BI dashboard. And on that dashboard, I can have Power BI visuals, KPIs. I could have live streaming tiles. I can have Excel Online content, and I can have reporting services visuals. So here, as a user, I'm looking at this report and I'm thinking, hey, this is a really important thing for me to look at every day. I know that this data gets refreshed once a day. This chart changes. As a sales manager, it's important for me to watch the sales performance. And so I'm going to say, I want to pin that to my Power BI dashboard. So I click here, and I choose that. And it goes and talks to my Power BI tenant and says, what workspaces are there? Well, there's one called Paul's Playground. And there's a dashboard on there that I created some time ago called Sales Analysis. You notice this third drop-down list right here says, how often do you want the tile on that Power BI dashboard to be updated? I want it to be daily. What this is going to do is it's going to create a reporting services subscription, which is actually a I love the internet connectivity here. Which is actually a SQL Server agent job. So that agent job gets scheduled, and so it runs once a day. I have no idea what just happened here.
You want to connect to my Wi-Fi? It's been pretty decent.
No, it's not. I don't think it was connectivity. I think it was like mouse noise or something. Yeah, there's something wacky going on just with my mouse. Anyway. So I did this a little earlier, so let me just refresh this page. So now I'm looking at my Power BI dashboard where I have previously pinned content, which includes Power BI KPIs. These are visuals that are on Power BI report pages. And I have an Excel pivot table with conditional formatting, some data bars with some important stuff in there. And there you can see a tile that I had pinned earlier. Now this particular tile I actually pinned before re-imaging my laptop, so it's connected with different settings than are available right now. But as a user, first of all, this is going to be up-to-date information because of that daily scheduled refresh. If I click on that, it's going to take me here. Okay, so now I have a simple navigation path that takes me to wherever that data is. And then I could have navigation links within this report that take me to more detailed reports, and so on. So that gives us both a cloud integrated story between our report server, whether it's using the Power BI report server or just regular reporting services and the Power BI service. I don't have to store any data in the cloud. I can just have my reports and dashboards up there, or I can store some data in the cloud if that's okay. But either way, when I click on this, it's going to take me on-prem, and now I'm working off of reports that are being fed live data. All right, and then there's the rest of my unfinished slides, which are really based on the same theme since I'm working on a day-long presentation. So that takes us to references and samples. So I'll go ahead and pimp my book here. Professional SQL Server 2016 Reporting Services. There is a free 6-week course that you can take that I did for Microsoft. If you go to edX.org, you can take this class for free. There are lessons and labs, and there are tests at the end. And for another $49 if you want a authentic looking certificate, you'll get that, so you can show your boss that you passed the class. But there is a boatload of great content on edX.org, and it's all free with the optional certificate. So that's my class that I did for Microsoft, but that's available to you for free. I've got some articles that I have links to in my blog, and you can follow my blog at SQLServerBI.blog.com or SQLServerBI.blog, which is also SQLServerBI.blog.com. I changed the URL some time ago. All right, well, with that, make sure you fill out your session evals. And thank you. Learn more from speaker name. Yes, with your Twitter handle here. So I appreciate your time and attention.